Welcome to our 5-minute Bible study, the book of Genesis. Our last session, we looked at the rise of civilization, the rise of society. After mankind was expelled from the garden because of sin, civilization begins to develop. But sin is present, and that mars everything. And we saw so well the tragedy of it all in the stories of Cain and Abel, the first murder, brother murdering his own brother. And then the story of Lamech, who multiplied Cain's sin 77 times, as he himself said. Oh, what sin does to us. This is moving to Genesis chapter 5. We come to one of those first genealogical tables, those begat chapters that are common in the Old Testament. Now it begins this way. It says, this is the written account of Adam's family line. When God created humanity, he created them in the likeness of God. He created male, female. He blessed them. He named them mankind when they were created. And then the rest of the chapter, you have this long genealogical list with incredible years listed. And I think what we're to mean by this is that as civilization expands, as humanity grows, as population increases, there's a long passage of time here. We're meant to see a long passage of time as we move from the first family on earth to the first populated world, the rise of human societies and civilizations. Now, in this part of Genesis, in the first few chapters, we normally refer to these incidents as prehistory. And by that I mean, when I say prehistory, I don't mean it's not historical. It is historical. These things happened. But they occurred so long ago that we are not able to date them by our dating methods. Now, a little bit later in the book of Genesis, when we get to the story of Abraham, we get into history that we can date. We know pretty much when Abraham lived. We can date it with our calendar. But the stories before Abraham are so far back in history, we can't accurately date them. And so what chapter 5 is trying to tell us is that a long ages passed as the population increased and society grew and civilization expanded. The only problem, of course, was that sin was still present. The effects of the fall were spreading throughout society and it was affecting everything. And so as we get into chapter 6, we see what sin does to human society. It says, when human beings began to increase in number on the earth and daughters were born to them, the sons of God saw that the daughters of humans were beautiful. They married any of them they chose. And the Lord said, my spirit will not contend with humans forever, for they are mortal. Their days will be 120 years. What does this passage mean? Now you recall last time we saw a little verse that said, and some men began to call on the name of the Lord. So as society grew, there was that community of those who sought after God. The rise of religion, if you would say it that way. They were seeking after God. God never leaves himself without a witness. But there were many who would not seek God. And so in this passage, what we're told is the years went by, the sons of God, that is those who sought after God, began to intermarry with those who did not, the daughters of humans, and they began to lose their faith, the intensity of their belief. They began to drift away from the worship of God. And that's why God says, I must limit their years. I will not contend with them forever. And then notice it goes on, it gets even worse. The Lord saw how great the wickedness of the human race had become on the earth, that every inclination of the thoughts of the human heart were evil all the time. You see what sin does? Once it gets a hold of our life, it just grows and grows and dominates us. And so as those who worshiped God began to intermarry with those who did not, and their faith was diluted, suddenly we've reached this place where the thoughts of the human heart are only evil all the time. Oh, the devastation of the fall, now reaching through all civilization. It says the Lord regretted that he had made human beings on the earth. His heart was deeply troubled. So the Lord said, I will wipe from the face of the earth the human race that I have created, and with them the animals, the birds, the creatures that move along the ground, for I regret that I have made them. Ultimately, sin brings judgment. It has to. It has to. And so we've reached a point in human development where judgment has to fall. But here's the great thing. God always provides a way of salvation for those who will believe. But Noah found favor in the eyes of the Lord. This is how we introduce you to Noah. Noah found favor in the eyes of the Lord. And we're going to start next time looking at the story of Noah, for he is such a classic example of a man of faith in the midst of a society of unbelief, and how God affects his salvation. He saves his people, even in the midst of the devastation of sin. We're going to see that in Noah. And we're also going to see how that gives us an illustration of God's ultimate plan to save all through Jesus Christ. So next time we'll start looking at the story of Noah, that great man of faith, the ark of salvation he's going to build under God's commands, and how that shows us the wonderful grace of God. He always provides salvation for those who will believe. But we'll start looking at that next time. Hope you have a great day today, and I'll look forward to seeing you next time in our 5-minute Bible study in the book of Genesis.